Mark bot.
Let me start out with a bit of background information. At the time this occurred, I was in nursing school and struggling to get by. My dad killed himself when I was little, and my mom turned to alcohol after that, so I didn't get much help there. But I was determined to get my degree and have a stable life for myself. I lived in a crappy ghetto apartment in the scary part of town. I'm talking gunshots at least once a week, needles on the sidewalk, just trashy. The random hours required for clinicals make it hard to hold down a good job. Plus, I didn't have any transportation besides my bike, which was on its last leg. Long story short, I was having a very hard time and looking for any way to make some money. Cue Jane. She was a good friend of mine whom I had known since freshman year. She noticed my situation and told me how she was making $200 plus a night at a local strip club. This got my attention, as that was a lot of money for me. She said the club had a no-touching policy and guys literally threw money at you. I made the decision to go with her that night and check it out. I was graduating in less than a year anyway, why not? Jane stayed by my side the entire night. I felt safe, no one touched me, no one harassed me, and I made over $300. I was ecstatic. The best part was I chose my own hours so I could make sure work didn't interfere with school. We went a few more times together before she left to visit her family for spring break. She left me with explicit instructions that if I decided to go to work, I was to take a cab. I actually had the money for that now. Call her when I left for work. Call her when I got there. Text her every hour and call her when I was leaving. This seemed like overkill to me, but I agreed. I finished all my classwork early one night and I thought, since it was spring break in a big city, I could probably earn a few hundred extra. I called a cab, called Jane, and went to work. Everything was normal. I was doing great and making more than I ever had. Then I was approached by a girl who I had seen there before. She introduced herself as Asia, but none of us went by our real names. She talked to me for a bit and asked where I lived. This set off tiny alarm bells, but I figured she was just being friendly and named off another shitty apartment complex near mine. She told me she was looking for a chill roommate and if I would be interested. I was obviously taken aback, but I was dying to get out of my scary place. I asked how much rent was, and she said the guy who owned the duplex wasn't charging students as long as they were working. This should have set off more alarms since I didn't tell Asia I was a student, but I completely missed that at the time. I was a little cautious but definitely interested. She told me she would take me by the place when the club closed so I could see it, then take me home. I thought there was no harm in looking. I called Jane and told her about the situation. She became very quiet and asked what the girl's name was. I told her and she responded saying I needed to call a cab and get back home now. I was pissed she was ruining this for me until she explained Asia was a known prostitute. Long story short, yeah, I would have gotten to live there, but as a sex slave. She didn't want me as a roommate. She wanted to bring me back to her pimp. I called a cab and hid in the back until it got there. I heard Asia looking for me, but I didn't come out. As soon as I got the text the cab was there, I ran out the back door and sprinted to it. I looked back to see the commotion had caused Asia, who was still looking for me, and a large man to turn in that direction. I never worked there again and graduated a few months later. I now live in a good apartment with a great job at the ER. But I shudder to think, what could have happened?
A few summers ago, I was working as a front desk receptionist at a popular downtown salon. On slower evenings, after the stylists finished their appointment schedule, I was occasionally left alone to book treatments and sell product until the salon closed. At this point, you're likely thinking that some creep came in one evening when I was alone to do what creeps do. But I'm not the victim in this story. With that being said, one evening, when I was alone, a young man came in to schedule an appointment for his girl. He told me that he wanted her hair colored every shade of red you got. I asked him what level of stylist he wanted. In other words, how much money did he want to spend? He said it didn't matter. He just wanted the next available appointment, which was several days later and on my day off. He scheduled the appointment under her name, which I won't use, but just know it was a very generic sounding name. When I returned to work, I was playing around on the computer used for appointments and suddenly remembered the appointment I had made for that man's girl. I wondered if they had even kept it. They had not. The appointment was marked as a no-show. I checked not because I felt this man was creepy, but because I was being a judgmental ass. This young man appeared to not have a lot of money, and that color appointment would have been very expensive. Judgment confirmed, and I didn't think about it again. 3 weeks later, I am standing at the front desk, and the same man walks in with a very young girl. At that time, I guessed she was about 15, and he in his late 20s. I glanced down at the name on the next appointment, and it was not the same name the man had previously given me, but it was an equally forgettable name. They approached me, and sure enough, he was checking her in for a color appointment. I suddenly went from judgment to full-on suspicion. But this girl did not seem scared or uncomfortable at all. In fact, she seemed very sweet and a bit dreamy. Think Luna Lovegood in the Harry Potter series. And he was perfectly pleasant, just as he'd been before. I checked the young girl in and alerted the stylist that her appointment had arrived. I knew the color was going to take a good 2.5 hours. The man stayed the entire time. Most of the time, he just messed with his phone and ignored everything and everyone around him. At some point, our youngest receptionist, who was 16, came in for her shift. I don't remember noting if the man noticed her. It just seems like suddenly he was at the other end of the counter talking to her. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but the body language and facial expressions indicated a confident man flirting with a young girl who was shy, but pleased with the attention she was receiving. Having once been a shy 16-year-old girl myself, at the time I was 23, red flags and alarm bells were marching in a parade all around me. When the stylist who was coloring the young girl's hair went back to the office, I followed. "What kind of color are you doing?" The stylist rolled her eyes and said, "I'm coloring that girl's hair about 1,000,000 shades of red. So tacky." Cue the master of ceremonies, because this parade of red flags just reached the zenith. "Yeah," I said, She'll regret that, but she seems like a nice kid. The stylist shrugged and said, she's kinda weird. Can hardly answer a simple question. What do you mean? I asked. I don't know, she said. She's just really airheaded and she doesn't even realize what's going on. Now I am very uncomfortable with all of this. But what the hell do I do? Call the police? Say what? So I did the goddamn wrong thing. I watched them leave without saying a word. Her color cost $300, and he paid for it by taking out a huge cash roll and handing me 20s. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah, you too. During this time, I was working at the salon and at a restaurant in a city that was 50 minutes from my apartment. The drive was all freeway and I knew it well. The landscapes, gas stations, mile marker signs, all blending together. So when I passed a billboard that I had passed so many times before, it shocked me when I actually processed what it had said. Report human trafficking. And I knew that's exactly what that slimy motherfucker was doing, and with these young girls. I called the number and told my story. I expected bored derision from the woman at the other end. I was going on a gut feeling after all. Nope. The woman was friendly and professional and assured me it would be looked into. All right. I was a complacent chicken shit the first time, but got it right. Let's hope someone helps that poor girl. Oh, and don't forget to speak with your young, naive coworker about the man. 2 days later, I'm back at the salon when 3 big men walk in. Alarm number 1. Their clothing was baggy and dirty, and they looked rough. Alarm number 2. 2 remained by the front door, attempting and failing to be aloof, while the biggest one walked straight toward me. Is Treble, that's my name, here today? Why? I need to speak to her. She can't have visitors at work and I'm not able to give out her schedule. Deep sigh, then a badge hanging from a chain on his neck slips from under his t-shirt. I'm Officer so-and-so with the Anytown Police Department, and I need to speak with her now. So I admit that I'm her, and tell him that we need to go in the office to talk. I proceed to tell and retell my story and answer a ton of questions. The officer also speaks with the stylist and my young coworker. I gave him the phone numbers that the man left for each appointment he made. Both were different. Then the 3 undercover officers left. It's over. They took me seriously, and they'll catch that piece of shit. But they're back the next day, along with a man who's in plain clothes but openly wearing his badge. The same officer walks up to the counter and shows me a piece of paper. Is this her? He asks. I don't really know what I'm looking at except to say that it's an advertisement of some sort. It's 2 black and white pictures of a young girl and nothing but a thong and text that is covered by the officer's hand. Also, I'm not sure if it's even her. The girl in this picture looks very similar, but a lot heavier. I tell the officer this and he says impatiently, well, what if she lost weight? Then I say, yes, I guess it could be her. Then Officer so-and-so and this new guy follow me back to the office again and ask me more questions. I am able to ask the officer if they've located her and he tells me that they have. He goes so far as to tell me that the undercover officers are headed to a hotel sting at that very moment. I say, "That's great," or something like that. The officer then asks me why I decided to call the tip line, and I told him that the whole thing just didn't seem right. He made some joke about offering me a job because they needed more people who acted on instinct. So movie-like, right? He then said, as soon as the sting was over, he was going to make sure I was given proper recognition. That's when joy turned to fear, and I was suddenly deep into my first realization that some cops are idiots who cannot be trusted, and that I too am an idiot. What? No. I don't want recognition. I want to stay anonymous. To that he says, "That's too bad because you deserve to be rewarded." No. And another realization that this officer has my full name, phone number, place of employment written down in his stupid little notebook. "What happens to your notes?" I said. Officer Fuckface responds like, "Don't worry, I've been doing this a long time and I've never lost an informant." What the fuck does that even mean? This is not an episode of the goddamn Sopranos. Rest in peace, Gandolfini. I'm not an informant. I'm some dumbass who called an anonymous tip line. Officer Jackass has to leave, but Badgeman stays. Oh, I didn't mention who he was. Special Agent Go Fuck Yourself with the Attorney General's office, and guess what? He's proud of me. He wishes more people cared like I do. He also has my phone number. Thankfully, I immediately get very ill with mono and beg the gods above to let me die in my sleep. Unfortunately, I get a phone call from the salon manager. There's 2 TV news channels here and some newspaper reporters too. We're playing dumb. But maybe it's a good thing you got sick. Do they know my name? I ask. No. I put in numerous calls to the officer and special agent and received no response. Oh, but I thought they were proud of me. The officer had given me 2 numbers. One to an office, one to a cell phone. After 2 days, the cell number no longer worked. It had been answered once by a woman who promptly hung up on me. And the officer was never available when I called. The special agent returned my call some days later. Finally! He wanted a written statement. Go fuck yourself. He couldn't understand why I was being so uncooperative. Go fuck yourself. Finally, he threatened me with a subpoena. You want to subpoena someone who called in an anonymous tip line. Go fuck yourself. He called me a few more times, but I didn't answer. Ultimately, I had to drag my sick ass to my favorite professor's office because he also happened to be a badass attorney. I felt incredibly uncomfortable asking for his advice. I felt I was definitely crossing a line, but I was desperate and very, very scared. I had now seen this story all over the news, along with the words, an employee at a local business, ... Long story short, Professor Awesome helped me. Special Agent Go Fuck Yourself stopped calling. The man was arrested and charged with a number of things, including human trafficking. But he was released, and I don't know what happened after that. I'm not scared anymore, but I was looking over my shoulder that entire summer.
Debbie's story is particularly chilling. One evening, Debbie said she got a call from a casual friend, Bianca, who asked to stop by Debbie's house. Wearing a pair of SpongeBob pajamas, Debbie went outside to meet Bianca, who drove up in a Cadillac with two older men, Mark and Matthew. After a few minutes of visiting, Bianca said they were going to leave. So I went and I started to give her a hug, Debbie told. Prime time! And that's when she pushed me in the car. As they sped away from her house, Debbie said that one of the men told Bianca to tie her up, said he threatened to shoot Bianca if she didn't comply. She tied up my hands first, and then she put tape over my mouth. And then she put tape in my eyes, Debbie said. While she was putting tape on me, Matthew told me if I screamed or acted stupid, he'd shoot me, so I stayed quiet. Unbelievably, police said Debbie was kidnapped from her own driveway with her mother, Curtsy, right inside. Back home with her other kids, Curtsy had no idea Debbie wasn't there. I was in the house. It was a confusing night. I had all the kids coming in and out. The last I knew, she had come back in, Curtsy said. It was so weird that night. I normally check on all my kids, and that night I didn't. I should have. Debbie said her captors drove her around the streets of Phoenix for hours. Exhausted and confused, she was taken to an apartment 25 miles from her home. She said one of her captors put a gun to her head. He goes, "If I was to shoot you right now, where would you want to be shot? In your head, in your back, or in your chest?" Debbie said. And then I hear him start messing with the gun, and he counted to 3, and then he pulled the trigger. And then I was still alive. I opened my eyes and I just saw him laughing. Debbie said she was drugged by her captors and other men brought her into the room where she was gang raped. And that's when I heard them say there was a middle-aged guy in the living room that wanted to take advantage of a 15-year-old girl, she said. And then he goes, "Bend her over. I want to see what I'm working with." And that's when he raped me. And I see more guys. 4 other guys had come into the room, and they had all had a turn. It was really scary.
Hello everyone, Margbot here. Hope you enjoyed the new video. I know it's definitely a very serious subject. I just wanted to say that human trafficking happens a lot more than people realize it does. And I thought I should share with you the number in case you want to report human trafficking, because you never know. And that number should be on the screen now. Keep your eyes open. You never know when you could be saving someone's life. And I know it may not always be the most pleasant experience, but half an hour of your time could save someone's entire life. Anyhow, have a great day or night. Not sure when you're listening to this. Margbot out.